Now let's come into our project and do sort of an end-to-end demonstration of building a controller that puts together some information to show in a view and also allow the user to edit some information in a view. What I want to do is take this movie class. Every movie has a title and a rating, and I also have a movie repository that retrieves and saves movie information for me. It's not important if that repository actually talks to the database or not. All I know is I can use that repository to get movie information and save movie information. In order to look at movie information, I would like my end users to go to a URL like /movies. So I'm not going to use the home controller for this. Instead, I'll create a new controller. And with Visual Studio, this is very straightforward. I can right-click on the controllers folder and say Add Controller, specify the name of that controller. We'll call it the Movies controller. And there's a checkbox here to say, go ahead and add action methods that will allow me to create, update, delete, and provide details about a movie. I'm going to select that and click Add. What we'll get is a class that has index, details, create, and edit actions, but the implementations still need to be filled out, and that's what we're going to do now. So when the user issues a request for /movies, that will invoke the index action. So inside of the index action, what we want to do is pull back a list of movies and show those to the user. The controller's responsibility here is simply to put together that list of movies. Let's first instantiate our repository. So we'll say new movie repository, and that's in a namespace that we need to bring into scope. And then our model will simply be get all the movies. Our model is essentially a list of movies, and we're going to pass that model into the view. So the view helper method, one of the overloads allows you to pass in model information. So what we're telling the MVC runtime to do next is to render a view with this model. But what view is it going to render? Well, this is a bit of a magic convention in the MVC projects. When you return a view helper like this, what the MVC runtime will do is look for a view with the same name as this action. So the action is index, it's going to look for an index view. You can override that and provide an explicit name with this helper, but we're going to stick with the default convention. We want to render an index view. But where's it going to look for an index view? It's going to look in a subfolder of the views folder. So notice there's an account folder, a home folder, and a shared folder. Shared views can be used from anywhere, but these other folder names are going to match a controller name. So the files inside of this home folder are views for the home controller, and these are Razor views. Razor views have a CS/HTML extension. We can actually get a really good idea of exactly what the MVC runtime expects if we run the application and go to the movies URL. But before I do that, let me add it into the layout view, which is sort of like the master page for the application, because the layout view here contains the structure that every view needs, the login display, the menu container. Again, it's very much like a master page in ASP.NET Web Forms. Other views plug their content into this main layout view. Here is our menu, and I'm going to add another list item, and I'm going to use something called an HTML helper. You'll see these a lot in the MVC framework. They build little snippets of HTML for you. Their purpose in life is to make building that HTML just a little bit easier. For instance, the action link helper is a method that you can invoke and say, here's the text I want to display, movies. And then I can pass in an action name. So I want to reach the index action of the movies controller. And what the HTML.actionLink does will essentially produce a hyperlink. It's going to produce an anchor tag, href equals, and then some URL that will be able to reach the index action of the movies controller. It's going to talk to the routing engine to figure out what that URL should look like. And it's making my life a little bit easier because I don't have to talk to the routing engine directly or call its API, and I don't have to hard code a link here. But with this HTML action link in place, let me go ahead and run the application. And you'll see that we have a movies link. And if we look real close in the status bar there, you'll see it's set up to go to /movies. So it figured out what the href should be. Let's click on that, and what the MVC runtime is telling me is, you told me to render a view, and you did that from the movie controller index action. So I went out and I looked for something called index.aspx. I looked for something called index.cshtml. I looked in the movies folder. I looked in the shared folder. This is the convention of the MVC framework. We wanted to render a view. These are the places it will look at by default. If I want to actually have this produce HTML instead of an error message, then I should create an index.cshtml in the movies folder. So let's close this down and take care of that problem. The first thing I'll do is come into the views folder and add a new folder here called movies. So views that are specific to my movies controller will go here. And now I can click and say add view. This brings up a little dialog box that will help me build this view. The view name is going to be index. The view engine is going to be Razor. And I want to create a strongly typed view. So a strongly typed view expects a model of a specific type. In this case, we're going to be passing along a list of movies. It's going to know that this is going to be a list of movies because I'm going to pick a scaffold template of type list. A scaffold template is a little piece of software that can go out and reflect on your model class, look at the properties that are available, and then build some boilerplate HTML markup for you. So running this scaffold template will produce some HTML that shows all the properties available on a movie for me. And it's going to build it inside of a table because we're working with a list of movies. When I click add, I'm going to see all that HTML that's produced for me. Here's a Razor model directive that strongly types this against an IEnumerable of movie. We're setting the title. We have an action link at the top that will go to the create action of the current controller. So that will be a link a user can click on if they want to add a new movie. And now we're going to build the table in this view. We can use a for each statement inside of a view, because what we need to do is for each through each movie that's in that collection of movies and display the title and the rating. We'll do that inside of table cells. Here are, again, HTML helpers that are producing action links that will let a user edit, delete, or see the details for a specific movie. All of this was produced by that scaffolding template, but I can go in and change it if I like. Let's just see what this looks like by running the application. I'll come into the movies location, and there's the 3 movies that our repository returned: Star Wars, The King's Speech, and My Blue Heaven. What I'd like to do next is allow a user to create a new movie, but of course we currently don't have that view defined. That's what we'll tackle next.